Everything you build starts with what you believe. Not what you say you believe, but what you prove through your actions. And those beliefs, they show up as values. Not just ideas on a poster or a list of words to repeat at team meetings, but as the standard you live by, the truth you stand on, the compass that directs your decisions when the path isn't clear. If your life feels scattered, if your business feels inconsistent, if your results feel unpredictable, start with your values. Because if those aren't clear, everything else will feel unstable. Strategy doesn't work without values. Discipline doesn't last without values. Leadership doesn't land without values. Your values are your roots. They're what keep you grounded when pressure rises. They're what hold your identity in place when you're pulled in 100 directions. They're what remind you who you are when results fluctuate and expectations change. And the truth is, most people don't take the time to define them. They chase tactics, they chase tools, they chase outcomes, but they don't stop to ask, what do I actually stand for? And without that clarity, they drift, they compromise, they break under pressure. But when your values are real, when they are clear, consistent, and alive in the way you think, move, and lead, everything gets stronger. Your culture sharpens, your relationships deepen, your focus gets tighter, your impact expands. Because now you're not building on noise, you're building on conviction. You're not just showing up, you're showing up aligned. You're not just making decisions, you're making decisions that reinforce your identity. And that kind of alignment creates power. It creates speed. Because now you don't waste time second-guessing everything. You know what matters. You know where to draw the line. You know what to protect. You know what's worth sacrificing and what's not. And in a world full of shortcuts, distraction, and empty ambition, that clarity becomes your edge. So if you're serious about growing, if you're serious about building something that lasts, start with values. Real ones. Ones that don't move when life gets hard. Ones that don't shift to please the room. Ones that are so ingrained into who you are that even when you're tired, they still lead you. The first core value that changes everything is integrity. And not the kind that's talked about in passing, but the kind that is lived when it's inconvenient. Because true integrity isn't about appearances, it's about alignment. Alignment between what you say, what you believe, and what you do. You can fake it for a while. You can build the image. You can say the right things, post the right quotes, talk a good game. But when pressure hits, when no one is watching, when the money's tight, or the room's full of opportunity, that's when the truth comes out. That's when the gap between your words and your behavior is either revealed or reinforced. Integrity is not just about honesty with others. It's about honesty with yourself. Because if you lie to yourself, it doesn't matter what the rest of the world believes. If your identity is built on convenience instead of conviction, you will always have to bend to circumstances to stay afloat. But when your foundation is integrity, you are unshakable. You don't need the external to feel solid because the internal is already rooted. You don't need the world to validate you because your actions already validate your beliefs. That kind of consistency gives you strength. It builds trust. It creates longevity. People feel integrity even if they can't articulate it. There's something about someone who moves with wholeness, who isn't playing a role, who isn't switching up depending on the audience, who isn't chasing approval at the expense of truth. They carry a calm that doesn't flinch, a power that doesn't need to flex. And in business, integrity is your credibility. It's the promise behind the product, the posture behind the pitch. It's what makes people come back, not because you sold them something, but because they felt you meant it. And in life, it's the difference between sleeping well and carrying stress, between being at peace and constantly having to manage the fallout of falsehood. Integrity doesn't make everything easy, but it makes everything clearer. You don't waste time wondering what to say. You don't waste energy managing two identities. You just show up honest. And in a world addicted to perception, honesty is a competitive advantage. You don't have to explain everything when you live with integrity, because your life explains itself. Your habits, your tone, your responses, your discipline, they all say the same thing. I live what I believe. I don't need to sell you on it. I'll show you. And yes, it will cost you. Integrity will cost you opportunities. It will cost you relationships. It will cost you short-term wins. But what it gives you in return is worth far more. Self-respect, reputation, internal freedom, and the kind of resilience that can't be faked. It means saying no when it would be easier to say yes. It means doing the right thing when no one is keeping score. It means calling yourself out when you fall short, not with shame, but with accountability. And that accountability, that's how you grow. Because when you hold the mirror up and refuse to lie to yourself, you get better. You make adjustments. You close the gap. You stop chasing performance and start building principle. And that shift, that's the shift that separates consistent leaders from charismatic talkers. People will follow someone with integrity, not just because of what they say, but because of what they model, because of the standard they set, because of the peace they carry, because of the trust they earn, not in one loud moment, but in 1,000 quiet decisions. And the people who last, the ones who build something real, something lasting, something meaningful, they've built it on integrity. They've had chances to cut corners and didn't. They've been tested in silence and stayed faithful. And that track record, that's what gives them their voice. Without integrity, every achievement is temporary. Every win is shallow. Every relationship is fragile because it was built on performance, not principle. But with integrity, everything becomes deeper. Your work, your influence, your character. And you don't have to wait for the world to reward it. Integrity is its own reward. When you live with it, you feel it in your heart, in your body, in your energy, in your mind. You stop carrying the burden of deception. You stop managing the mess of inconsistency. You just walk in the light. And when life gets hard, and it will, it's your integrity that will hold you steady, not your titles, not your talent, not your tactics, your integrity, because everything else can be shaken. But the person who refuses to compromise is the person who cannot be defeated. Next, the second core value that transforms everything is responsibility, and not the surface level kind. Not just showing up when things go well, but deep, unapologetic, full spectrum ownership of everything you touch, of your outcomes, of your effort, of your energy, of your impact. Responsibility is not about fault, it's about control. You may not be to blame for everything that's happened to you, but you are responsible for what you do with it, for how you respond, for how you grow, for what you build moving forward. You can't build a powerful business or a powerful life on blame. Blame is easy. Blame is cheap. Blame feels good in the moment because it gives you a target, but it robs you of growth. It steals your clarity. It keeps you focused on everything outside of your control. But when you flip the lens, when you look inward instead of outward, everything shifts. You start asking better questions. You start seeing where you gave away your power, where you didn't prepare, where you compromised, not with shame, with strategy. Because responsibility isn't about guilt, it's about leverage. The more you take responsibility for, the more influence you gain. Not over other people, over yourself, over your mindset, over your momentum, over your results. And most people never tap into that power. They wait. They wish. They hope circumstances change. They hope someone sees them. They hope things get easier. But the people who win, they don't wait for the world to change. They get better. They sharpen their edge. They own their process. Responsibility is heavy, but that weight builds strength. Because when you carry it consistently, you build something unshakable inside you. A backbone, a center, a core that doesn't collapse every time things go wrong. And things will go wrong. That's guaranteed. What's not guaranteed is how you respond. Whether you rise or retreat, whether you take the hit and keep moving, or sit in it, waiting for someone else to make it right. That moment defines who you become. You can have reasons or you can have results, but you cannot have both. The world will give you endless reasons to stop, to complain, to point fingers. But every time you take the bait, you lower your standard. You tell your mind that someone else is in control of your outcome. But when you decide that no matter what happens, you own your effort, you own your follow-through, you own your tone, you own your pace, that's when you become dangerous. That's when you stop getting shaken. That's when you become unbreakable. Responsibility shows up in your decisions, in how you manage your time, in how you respond to criticism, in how you lead your team, in how you treat your family after a long day, in how you follow through on the promises no one else remembers but you. And the people who live this way, the ones who walk into every room and own their energy, own their mistakes, own their words, own their pace, those are the ones who create change. Because people follow responsibility. They trust it. They feel it. Responsibility makes you magnetic. It gives your presence weight. Not because you're the loudest, but because you're grounded. People know you mean what you say. They know you're not looking for a scapegoat. They know that if something goes wrong, you'll step up, not step back. This value doesn't just change your business. It transforms your relationships. It changes your marriage. It changes your leadership. It changes the way your kids see you. Because when they watch you take responsibility for the hard stuff, they learn how to do it too. You become the kind of person who doesn't need to be reminded, who doesn't need to be watched, who doesn't need to be managed. Because you're already managing yourself. You've already taken the weight of what you signed up for and decided, this is mine, all of it. And the best part, responsibility is contagious. When you live it, it raises the standard of the people around you. It calls people higher, not because you preach at them, but because you model what it looks like to own the outcome. You want to build something that lasts? Own it. All of it. The wins, the failures, the lessons, the adjustments, the responsibility to keep getting better. That posture, that's leadership, that's maturity. That's the foundation for anything worth building. Next, the third core value that transforms how you lead, how you build, how you live is discipline. Not the kind that looks good on paper, but the kind that shows up when you don't feel like it. The kind that makes no excuses. The kind that doesn't need to be told twice. The kind that gets it done. Discipline is the bridge between your intentions and your outcomes. It's the only thing that turns vision into reality. You can dream all day. You can set goals. You can make plans. But without discipline, none of it sticks. None of it scales. None of it lasts. And the hardest part about discipline is that it doesn't reward you right away. It's invisible at first. It's boring. It's quiet. It happens in the dark, when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, when no one's validating you. Discipline is inconvenient. It shows up when you're tired, when you're distracted, when the motivation has worn off. It shows up on the days when your emotions say, not today, and your standard says, get it done anyway. And that's what separates the ones who build something from the ones who just talk about it. Everyone wants success. Everyone wants growth. Everyone wants the breakthrough. But only the disciplined are willing to earn it. Not once, but daily, relentlessly. Because discipline is not a personality trait. It's not something you're born with. It's a decision. And it's a decision you make over and over until it becomes identity. Until it becomes so much a part of you that skipping the hard thing feels wrong. You can train discipline like a muscle. And like any muscle, it grows with reps, with resistance, with tension, with the choice to stay when you want to quit, with the choice to push when it would be easier to coast, with the choice to build even when you don't see results yet. And that's the key. Discipline lives in delay. It's not about instant payoff. It's about consistency over time. The kind of consistency that most people aren't willing to live with. The kind that stacks quietly and compounds into momentum, into mastery, into results that others can't replicate. People will say you're lucky, but they didn't see the mornings you didn't want to get up, the hours you spent when no one noticed, the meals you skipped, the invites you declined, the reps you did in silence, the sacrifices you made when it didn't feel worth it. That's discipline. Discipline looks like doing the thing without negotiating with yourself. No debate, no discussion, just decision. You don't ask if you feel like it. You've already decided. You do it because that's who you are now. That's the standard. And that standard creates freedom. It frees you from chaos. It frees you from overwhelm. It frees you from the pressure of having to catch up because you've stayed ahead. It frees you from emotional roller coasters because you've trained your mind to move regardless of mood. You want freedom? Earn it through discipline. Not by avoiding structure, but by living in it. By building a rhythm so strong it carries you through every season. The good, the bad, the uncertain. Discipline doesn't change when the weather does. It stays locked in. And when you live with that kind of discipline, you stop starting over. You stop restarting every Monday. You stop binging, then quitting. You stop burning out. Because now, you're not sprinting. You're building. You're moving with purpose. Discipline means you don't rise and fall with your feelings. You're not run by what's convenient. You're not owned by impulse. You're grounded in principle. You've trained your system to keep going, even when the fire dims. And the deeper that discipline gets, the more you respect yourself. Not because you're perfect, but because you've proven to yourself that you're trustworthy, that you can count on you, that you'll show up, even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when no one knows. That's what discipline gives you. Self-respect, clarity, strength, structure, leadership. And that leadership starts with how you lead yourself. before you ever lead a business, before you ever lead a team. You lead your schedule, your habits, your attention, your energy. If you can master those things, you can lead anything. Because discipline isn't about control, it's about capacity. The more discipline you have, the more you can carry, the more you can build, the more you can give. And the people who build great businesses, great cultures, great families, they all have discipline at the core. They don't skip the work. They don't chase hacks. They show up. They stay late. They think long term. They do what needs to be done, especially when it's not glamorous. And the best part? Discipline compounds. The more you do it, the easier it gets. The more consistent you are, the more it becomes part of your identity. And once it's who you are, it doesn't take energy to keep going. It takes energy to stop. The fourth core value that will transform your business and life is humility. Not the fake kind, not the kind that shrinks, not the kind that plays small to be liked. Real humility, the kind that's rooted in strength, the kind that says, I don't have all the answers, but I'm committed to learning them. Humility is power under control. It's presence without ego. It's confidence that doesn't need a spotlight. Because when you're truly confident, you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to dominate every room. You don't have to be the loudest person at the table. You're secure enough to listen, to learn, to change your mind when new truth shows up. Humility is the open door to wisdom. It's the starting line of every breakthrough. Because the moment you stop needing to be right, you create space to get better. You create space to be challenged. You create space for feedback. And feedback, if you're humble enough to receive it, will accelerate everything. Pride blocks progress. It locks you into your current identity. It makes you defensive. It makes you fragile. Because now your ego is wrapped around the outcome. And when the outcome fails, your identity breaks. But humility, it makes you resilient. It makes you adaptable. Because your ego isn't at risk, only your ideas. And when you're humble, failure doesn't threaten you. It teaches you. It gives you something to work with. It becomes part of your training. You stop fearing mistakes and start learning from them. You stop hiding behind a facade and start standing on a foundation. That foundation, it's real. Because it's built on who you're becoming, not on how well you can pretend. Humility frees you from pretending. It frees you from comparison. It frees you from trying to impress people who aren't even watching. And the best leaders, the ones who build teams that thrive, cultures that grow, businesses that scale, they all carry humility. They ask questions. They admit when they're wrong. They stay curious. They put the mission above their image. That's rare, because we live in a world that rewards image, that praises performance, that teaches you to act like you've got it all figured out. But the truth is, no one does. And the people who are honest about that are the ones who learn the fastest. They're not threatened by talent, they're inspired by it. They're not embarrassed by growth, they're obsessed with it. They don't hide their flaws, they manage them. And they surround themselves with people who challenge them, not just compliment them. That's leadership, not perfection, not pride, humility, the strength to be teachable, the courage to admit you don't know, the wisdom to stay a student, even when you've succeeded, even when you've been praised, even when you're winning. Because winning can be dangerous. Success can fool you into thinking you don't need to grow anymore. It can lull you into arrogance, into entitlement, into protecting your position instead of improving your performance. But if you carry humility, you stay hungry. You stay grounded. You stay open. You keep asking, how can we make this better? Not because it's broken, but because better is always the goal. And better only shows up when you're humble enough to pursue it. This isn't weakness. This is strength, quiet strength, the kind that builds trust, the kind that builds culture, the kind that makes people want to follow you because they know you care more about the mission than your own ego. And that humility, it's felt in your tone, in your posture, in how you listen, in how you handle tension, in how you carry authority. You don't have to shout when you're grounded. You don't have to prove when you're aligned. You don't have to defend when your work speaks for itself. The most powerful people in the room are often the quietest. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they've trained themselves to listen first. They don't rush to speak. They don't interrupt to impress. They observe. They assess. And when they speak, it lands because it's thoughtful, because it's clear, because it's not about them. You want to be respected? Be humble. You want to build something people want to be a part of? Be humble. You want to lead with influence, not just authority? Be humble. And you don't have to announce it. You live it. Humility is a posture you carry, not a badge you wear. It's not about being soft. It's about being secure. Secure enough to hold space for others. Secure enough to be wrong. Secure enough to keep evolving. And the people who carry that kind of humility, they're the ones who keep rising because they never stop learning. They never stop growing. They never stop sharpening. And the deeper they go, the higher they can build. Next, the fifth core value that will transform your business and your life is adaptability. The ability to adjust without losing who you are. The strength to pivot without falling apart. The mindset to move forward even when the plan breaks down. Adaptability is not weakness. It's not indecision. It's not inconsistency. It's intelligence. It's maturity. It's resilience. It's knowing that the world doesn't care how committed you are to your plan because it's going to change anyway. And when it does, when the thing you counted on shifts, when the person you relied on leaves, when the strategy that used to work stops working, your ability to adapt is the difference between momentum and meltdown. Most people collapse not because they're soft, but because they're rigid. Because they're so committed to their version of how things were supposed to go, they don't know how to respond when it doesn't look that way anymore. They get stuck in stories. Stories that say, it shouldn't be this way. Stories that say, this wasn't the plan. Stories that say, I wasn't ready for this. But the people who adapt, they let go of the story and deal with what's in front of them. They stop resisting what's already true. They stop trying to rewrite reality. They say, okay, this is where we are. What now? And that question, that mindset, that's what allows them to stay in motion. Because motion creates opportunity. Motion keeps you learning. Motion keeps you in the game. But if you shut down, if you sit still frozen, waiting for life to go back to the way it was, you fall behind. And the world is not slowing down. Business is not slowing down. Growth is not slowing down. So if you're committed to building something that lasts, you can't just be strong, you have to be flexible. You have to be able to bend without breaking. Adaptability means you hold your principles tight, but your methods loose. You know who you are. You know what matters. But how you get there, that can change. That will change. And if you're not ready to adjust, you'll miss your moment. Because sometimes opportunity shows up looking different than you expected. It doesn't knock politely. It doesn't always come through the door you planned. And if you're not open, if you're so locked into your old way of thinking, you won't see it. Adaptability requires humility. It requires curiosity. It requires courage. The courage to admit when it's time to shift. The courage to release what worked yesterday, but is holding you back today. The courage to build something new, even if you're not sure it will work yet. That kind of flexibility, it's rare, but it's necessary, especially if you're leading others. Because teams don't follow leaders who panic. They follow leaders who adjust, who pivot with clarity, who stay calm under pressure, who move forward even if the path isn't fully clear. And that movement, it builds trust. It creates stability, not because everything is certain, but because your posture is. Because even if you don't know everything, you know how to adapt. You know how to take feedback. You know how to shift strategy without compromising your values. That's what allows businesses to evolve. That's what allows relationships to last. That's what keeps you grounded when everything else changes. Because your identity is not in your plan. It's in your ability to stay flexible while staying focused. Adaptability is not about being reactive. It's not about jumping at every trend. It's about being strategic in real time, about making adjustments without losing alignment, about evolving with intention. And if you want to stay in the game, if you want to keep building even when things change, this value becomes non-negotiable. Because things will change, guaranteed. The only question is whether you're equipped to grow with it, or whether you'll try to force an outdated method into a new moment. That's the trap. Holding on to what worked in the last chapter so tightly that you miss what's possible in this one. But when you value adaptability, when you practice it, when you expect it, when you model it, you stop clinging. You start evolving. You start flowing. And the people who can evolve in real time, those are the ones who win. Not just today, long term. Because they're not just focused on being right. They're focused on getting it right. And they're willing to change, to do it. Next, the sixth core value that transforms not just your business, but your life is generosity. Not just in money, in mindset, in time, in energy, in presence. Generosity is not just about what you give, it's about how you live. Because there are people who give to be seen, and then there are people who give because it's who they are. The first kind makes noise. The second kind makes impact. The first kind is performative. The second kind is transformative. Generosity at its core is not about excess. It's not about giving when you have extra. It's about choosing to serve even when it costs you. Choosing to pour out when it would be easier to protect. Choosing to be present when distraction is calling your name. You want to build something lasting? Build with generosity. Lead with generosity. Listen generously. Give people more than they expect. More value, more presence, more depth, and not just in public, behind closed doors, when no one's keeping score. Because business is built on people. Life is built on connection. And people don't follow titles. They follow care. They follow presence. They follow consistency. And generosity is what makes people feel seen. It's what turns a transaction into trust. And this goes beyond money. Generosity is how you show up in the hallway, not just the boardroom. How you treat the person with no power, not just the one with a microphone. It's how you talk about people when they're not around. It's how you hold space when someone is struggling. That kind of generosity, that everyday kind, is rare, but it's powerful. It creates loyalty. It builds culture. It changes people. Not because you told them what to do, but because you modeled what it means to serve, what it means to lead from abundance, not scarcity. Scarcity says, I need to protect what I have. Abundance says, I can create more of what I give. Scarcity says, if I give too much, I'll have less. Abundance says, the more I give, the more value we all experience. And when your mindset shifts to that space, where giving is not a threat but a strategy, you become magnetic. People want to work with you. People want to follow you because they can feel the difference. They can feel that it's not about ego, it's about impact. That's the power of generosity. It expands your influence without forcing it. It multiplies your reach without manipulating it. It creates legacy, not just revenue. And the leaders who understand this, they build organizations that outlast them. They don't just extract value from people. They create value for people. They don't just demand effort. They pour belief. They don't just make deals. They build trust. And that trust, it turns into momentum, into referrals, into results. And in your personal life, it's the same. You want to have meaningful relationships? Be generous with your words, with your attention, with your follow-through. Most people are listening to respond. Generous people listen to understand. Most people check the box. Generous people carry the weight. That posture, that energy, it multiplies. Because generosity isn't just what you give. It's how you show up. It's the energy you bring to the room. It's the tone you carry into conversations. It's the choice to see people, not just their results, not just their title, but them. And when people feel seen, they move differently. They perform differently. They trust deeper. They fight harder. Because someone chose to be generous with belief, generous with encouragement, generous with presence. This doesn't mean you burn yourself out. This doesn't mean you say yes to everything. This doesn't mean you carry everyone's burden. It means you lead with value, with excellence, with heart. And when you give fully, not out of obligation, but out of alignment. Generosity doesn't need to be big to be powerful. Sometimes the most impactful gift is attention, is consistency, is remembering something small that matters to someone else, is following up, is going the extra 10% when everyone else is giving 80%. And when you live that way, you don't just build income, you build impact. You don't just attract talent, you build loyalty. You don't just create results, you create reputation. And reputation will take you further than skill ever could. So yes, be generous. Not because it looks good, because it is good, because it shifts the room, because it deepens the culture, because it opens doors you never could have forced open with talent alone, because it transforms people. And when people transform, everything around them does too. Next, the seventh core value that will transform your business and life is courage. The kind of courage that doesn't wait for approval. The kind that moves before the fear goes away. The kind that keeps showing up when everything in you wants to shrink. Because if you're serious about building something real, if you want to create impact that lasts, you are going to face fear. You are going to feel exposed. You are going to face moments where everything in you says, sit down, stay quiet, play it safe. And in that moment, Courage becomes the difference between movement and regret. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is movement in the presence of fear. It's decision in the face of doubt. It's saying, I might not be ready, but I'm going anyway. And most people never build what they're capable of, not because they're not talented, but because they keep waiting to feel confident. They keep waiting to be certain. But certainty doesn't come first. Action does. And the people who move, the people who take the first step, they're the ones who earn the confidence they were waiting for. Courage is required at every level. It's required to start. It's required to lead. It's required to scale. It's required to say no to what's good so you can say yes to what's great. It's required to have hard conversations, to set boundaries, to stand for something when it costs you. And that cost, that's real. Courage will cost you comfort. It will cost you convenience. It will cost you the approval of people who were never meant to understand your calling. But what it gives you in return is so much greater. It gives you clarity. It gives you alignment. It gives you self-respect. Because when you move with courage, you stop performing and start leading. You stop pretending and start building. You stop fitting in and start standing out. Not for attention, but for truth. And that kind of courage, it's contagious. It gives other people permission to move, to rise, to stop hiding. Your courage becomes a spark. It shifts culture. It changes rooms. It opens space for realness, for depth, for decisions that matter. You can't outsource courage. No one can be brave for you. It's a personal decision. It's a private one. It starts when you stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I don't try? Because staying stuck, that's a cost too. And most people never count it. They count the risk of change, but they never count the risk of staying the same, of going one more year, doing something they've outgrown, of waking up to the same regret, of wondering what could have been if they'd had the courage to say yes. But not you. You've come too far. You've worked too hard. You've felt that fire in your gut for too long to ignore it now. So even if it scares you, even if you don't have the full plan, even if the voice of doubt is loud, you move. Because courage doesn't need permission. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need guarantees. It just needs a decision. One step, one choice, one moment of, I'm not backing down today. And if you can make that decision over and over, everything begins to change. Your courage becomes your compass, not your feelings, not your comfort, not your old patterns. You start asking, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? And then you do that again and again until fear loses its grip, until your faith becomes louder, until your actions speak so loud your doubt stops trying to keep up. And you will get tested. You'll get pushback. You'll fail. You'll face uncertainty, but you'll keep moving. Not recklessly, but relentlessly. Because you've decided that fear is not your ceiling, that average is not your destination, that your calling is bigger than your comfort. That's what courage gives you. The power to say, this is who I am. I'm not going back. I'm not waiting. I'm not hiding. I'm building something. I'm becoming someone. And I will not let fear be louder than my future. This entire time, it was never about more strategies, more tactics, more hacks. It was about building something deeper, stronger, real. Something you could stand on when the pressure came. Something you could rely on when the noise got loud. Something you could return to when everything else was uncertain. That something was values, not just words, not just ideas, but the decisions you make when no one is watching, the lines you refuse to cross, even when no one would know, the standards you hold, even when it costs you. Because when values are real, when they're lived, not just quoted, they shape everything. Your mindset, your leadership, your business, your relationships, your future. They become the invisible structure behind the life you're building. And those 7: integrity, responsibility, discipline, humility, adaptability, generosity, courage. They are not buzzwords. They are the backbone. They are the filter. They are the code that high-level leaders and high-character builders live by. You want clarity? Anchor to values. You want momentum? Live them daily. You want alignment? Don't just talk them, apply them. And when you slip, and you will, you return to them. You recalibrate. You hold the line. Because values don't keep you from falling. They help you get back up faster. They help you stay on track when emotions pull at you. They help you lead with consistency when others waver. They help you choose the long game when the short term looks shiny. They are your edge. Not because they make everything easy, but because they keep you centered when it's hard. They help you sleep well, lead well, build well, because you're not just chasing results anymore. You're building from truth. And people will feel that in your brand, in your posture, in your conversations, in your presence. Because when you live from values, you don't have to announce your character. It shows up before you speak. So take these 7 and embed them into your team, into your habits, into your morning, into your schedule, into your decisions, into your leadership, into your life. And watch what happens, not overnight, but over time. Because the transformation isn't in one big moment. It's in the repetition, the commitment, the days you live the standard instead of just speaking it. That's where the real change begins. And from that foundation, you don't just build a business. You build a legacy. You build something people can feel, something that lasts, something that changes the people who walk with you. Not because of how loud you are, but because of how clear you've become.